Hello again. Now, civil society and millions of South Africans were shocked at the recently released crime stats. Police Minister Bheki revealed earlier this week that over 7,000 people were killed in just 3 months. That's July, August and September this year alone. Rape and kidnapping are also up, with women and children bearing the brunt. Let's discuss these shocking figures now with independent crime consultant Johan Berger. And I'll also be taking you to Nigeria and to London just to get a sense from our correspondent Tessem Akende in Jos and Julia Chapman, our UK correspondent, about what is the crime stats look like, or an example, a sample of the crime stats in those countries. But let's begin here at home. Mr. Berger, good afternoon. I mean, when I heard that 7,004 people were killed in South Africa, July, August and September alone this year, I mean, that was a staggering figure. I mean, it's like nearly 80 people a day on average were murdered in our country. I mean, that's really a bad number.
Yes, it is, Dan. These are shocking figures, and this comes on top of crime increases since 2011, 2012. So we've been increasing our crime levels, and that includes our murder rate, almost on a year-on-year basis since 2011-12. There was this short break or reprieve that we had in 2020 when we had the hard lockdown, but since then it's back to the upward curve in most of our serious and violent crimes. So it's not just murder, it is aggravated robbery in all its forms and sexual offences and so on. So yes, our crime figures certainly are not only shocking, but the indications are that it's going to go up in the immediate future, because the conditions that underlie these crime increases are not bound to change overnight.
Yeah, and tragically, as you said, sexual offences have also gone up. I mean, we saw, according to the stats revealed by the police minister just the other day, between July and September, we had over 13,000 women who were victims of assault, and also over 10,000 rape cases were opened with the South African Police Service. And today in the country and in other parts of the world is the start of the United Nations 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. We don't seem to be winning the battle against GBV, Mr. Berger, in South Africa.
Yeah, it doesn't look like this, you know. Of course, we all welcome the current campaign, the campaign that we see every year, you know, to raise awareness about these crimes against women and children, but it doesn't appear to be making an impact. If you look at the crime increases every year and you know, every quarter almost, it doesn't appear to make an impact. It's almost impossible to tell, of course, you know, whether the situation would have been worse without this awareness campaign. But just looking at the figures, it doesn't look like we are making any progress.
Yeah, and then just talking about murders, I want to go to Nigeria now and bring in Tessem Akende, our correspondent in Jos. I mean, here we're looking at 3 months. Good afternoon, Tessem. Welcome to today. About the figures of 7,400 people killed in South Africa just in 3 months alone this year, July, August and September. That's our situation here. What do the numbers look like in your neck of woods? I mean, Nigeria is Africa's largest economy.
Yes, indeed, it's a sad situation here as well, just as it is in South Africa. It's no longer news to many people that Nigeria has been fighting an insurgency for over a decade. That's just that's one reason. That's one area that has really claimed lives. But talking about in the last 3 months here in Nigeria, we've had you know, killings and abductions, you know, kidnapping for ransom. Of course, we've had killings of security personnel as well, but for different reasons, and we have different regions here in Nigeria, and you know, experts, security experts, attribute different reasons as to why this is happening in different regions. In the northeastern part of the country, for instance, we have an insurgency that has claimed several lives. So many people believe that, or analysts say that the insurgency is actually behind the killings and abduction of people in that part of the country. Many people believe there's an ideology behind it as well. Down to the north central part, we have, a jostle for land between farmers and herders. This has actually claimed lives as well. So different reasons, different, attributed for, the killings and the abductions. Down to the northwestern part, where we have states like Kaduna, we have states like Zamfara and others. There's a jostle for, mineral deposits, in states like Zamfara. So these are several reasons why we're having this, these killings and these kidnappings. I must also say that the criminality, analysts say that there's so much, poverty and unemployment. And so many people just, get into the business of kidnapping people and, waiting for ransoms to be paid so they can have, money. So it has become an industry of some sort. But it's a really sad situation. Down to the southeastern part of the country, we have, in the last 3 months, we've had cases where police personnel were killed and some other paramilitary, personnel. So different, the dynamics are quite much, but really, and sadly, there are projections that, of course, we're entering an election year next year. There are projections that if something is not done very fast, the killings might just continue because Nigeria has a history of political violence. So that's the situation really here.
Yeah, in terms of numbers, I understand 149 people were killed alone in September in Nigeria. Was that outside the conflict that you are referring to? Was that due to crime murders or criminal murders?
Well, these statistics are a collation of different media reports and the Nigeria Security Tracker, which has been monitoring the situation. So it's a whole sum. I must say that there are different statistics from, there are statistics that are even higher than these numbers we have from Statista and a compilation of media reports. Okay. Some say in the last 3 months, over 800 have been killed. They're actually diverse reports, so to say.
Okay. Let's go to the UK. Our President Ramaphosa has just ended a state visit to the UK just the other day, yesterday, and the UK is one of South Africa's biggest trading partners in the world. Julia, good afternoon. What do the numbers look like? I mean, you are hearing about us here in South Africa just this week, learning that 7,004 people were killed, were murdered. That we'll call homicide, I guess, between July, August and September, just in 3 months. Crime-wise, what are the numbers looking like in your neck of woods?
In contrast to what we've just been hearing from Nigeria and South Africa, crime in the UK is actually falling, and it has been for the last few years now. Of course, the pandemic period was a bit of an anomaly. There was a really big drop in crime reported. But when we look now at the most recent figures from the Office for National Statistics, they are comparing a survey that they do every year for the year to June this year. They're comparing that year with the one leading up to March 2020, because that is the last time they had reliable data, the pandemic not really reflecting what the picture is overall. And what we are seeing in those figures is that crime overall has fallen 8% in the year to June 2022 compared with the year to March 2020. So that is a pretty good picture. Now, it doesn't exactly chime with the figure we're seeing for reported crime. The Office for National Statistics is doing a survey. They carry out this survey every year, and they are speaking to people, randomly chosen people, to reflect the overall picture. It's a bit more like a poll, but they believe this is in fact a more accurate picture of crime in the UK, particularly smaller crime like theft and robbery. Obviously, this doesn't reflect things like homicide. Whereas reported crime in the UK was actually up 7% in the period in the last year compared to the period before the pandemic. Now, that mostly reflects an effort to better record crimes, to make sure that more of them are reported. So that is not necessarily a reflection of the fact that crime is going up. Indeed, the ONS believes it is falling. And when it comes to homicide specifically, looking at that period of the year to June, it fell 5%. There were 600 679 homicides in the year, and that reflects a fall from 716 in the year to March 2020. But what we are seeing a rise in is sexual crimes being reported to police. That is something that is of grave concern, of course, but police forces say that that may be a reflection more of the fact that people are becoming more comfortable coming forward and reporting crimes of a sexual nature. And despite the fact that crime overall in England and Wales is falling, what we aren't seeing is trust going up in police forces. There has been a really big trust crisis, particularly here in London, with the Metropolitan Police reflecting a couple of very high-profile cases involving police officers. So the forces are working really hard now to regain the trust of the British public, particularly because crime is going down, although there could still be some knock-on effects from the pandemic that are reflected in these figures.
Yeah, so some new reported cases seemingly going up, including sexual offences, but overall crime it's on the decline in England and Wales. Thank you very much, Julia Chapman, our correspondent in the UK. And thank you as well, Tessa Makende in Jos in Nigeria, where a number of factors are contributing there as well to the high numbers of people who are being killed. But I'm going to stay with you, Mr. Berger, as we conclude. Very, very briefly, you are hearing from Julia Chapman that crime is on the decline overall in the UK. The trust is rising, at least in London, in the Metro Police, she said there. Tessa Makende painting a complex picture of what's contributing to the deaths in Nigeria. So what are your thoughts? I mean, when you look at us, and we're not even having a conflict like the northern part of Nigeria, but seemingly more people are dying here than there in terms of murder rate.
Yes, then it's, as you said, at the beginning, it's very difficult to make any sort of comparisons. But if you look at the UK, I mean, and you look at those figures that Julia gave us, and I only saw the lines I couldn't hear, but I mean, 679 homicides in a question of 9 months. And you look at our murder rate over a period of 12 months, we average about 26,000 murders. So we are not even close. And even if you look at Nigeria, 149 murders for September alone, even if you triple that number, you get to less than 500, 600 murders in 3 months' time. Where we look at our murders, we had, just as you said, more than 7,000 murders in the same period. So clearly, you know, the situation here is not just vastly different, but it's vastly worse than any of those two countries, and especially Nigeria, that's also an African country, which tells us that something is very seriously wrong in this country. And this is, of course, something that needs to be thoroughly debated by a number of experts that are brought together that can analyze the situation and look at why do we have the problems that we have and how do we address them.